Welcome to another episode of the Dentology podcast, where we discuss the business of dentistry. In this podcast series, we'll be discussing all the non-clinical aspects of dentistry, from goodwill values, finance, marketing, how to buy and sell a dental practice, mindset, through to where you can invest your money in team management issues. My name is Andy Acton, and I'm joined by my co-host, Chris Strevens. Let's jump straight into it. Insights that listeners are going to take from what Dev Patel from Dental Beauty had to share with us are going to blow them away.
Yeah, I think it's, for me, it was showing that one, at an early age, and how he's wired. And to go from where he started to where they are now, I think it will be inspirational to people.
But also that pathway and sharing kind of that, they're not kind of secrets, but those stepping stones from getting from 1 to 2 practices to, you know, he's in the mid-30s now and he's going to be at 50 practices by the end of the year. That as a meteoric rise, everybody who's interested in owning or running a dental practice or growing a group should be listening to this. Definitely. I think as we know, the people that we've seen who've aspired to grow a group but never got past 3 or 5, you know, because either, well, for whatever reason, but he's done it. That's amazing inspiration to people. There's real gold in there. No, it's fabulous. So welcome to our latest episode of Dentology, the Business of Dentistry podcast, and we are incredibly fortunate today to be joined by Dev Patel.
Slot us into his diary.
Incredibly busy schedule. So Dev's a dentist, also founder and CEO of Dental Beauty Partners, the founder of Dental Circle, the training network for dental professionals, an absolute entrepreneur, and get this, the only dentist in the UK to win an award at every award show in dentistry. Amazing.
That's quite impressive, isn't it?
Welcome, Dev. How are you doing?
Yeah, thanks, guys. Pleasure to have you. Pleasure to have me, sorry. Really glad to be here and speaking to you guys again.
Yeah, but genuinely, we know how busy you are. We're going to talk about the things you're doing within Dental Beauty at the moment, but the speed at which you're moving, we're grateful for you to find the time to talk to us. We'll get to your journey and discuss kind of the growth plans that you've got that are happening in Dental Beauty Partners and what makes a difference. But to start with, could you just kind of tell us, you know, what was your childhood like? How did things start for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a typical English Indian, born in the UK. I don't think I had much of a different childhood to most dentists in the UK, to be honest with you. Went to school, studied hard. I think I've always been quite entrepreneurial. I've been brought and bred up in a family of hardworking Indians. My parents came from East Africa, got kicked out from there due to political reasons, as I'm sure most other Indians in the country did in their age group, back in the 70s. And then, I think a lot of their bread and butter traits of, hard work ethic, caring for people as medical professionals, they were pharmacists, all those kind of things have taken, they've kind of rubbed off on me over the years. And, I had a very different childhood to most other kids in my year, for sure. I was working in the pharmacy 12 hours a day from the age of 6. So, it wasn't straightforward as, riding my bike and eating sweets every day. But was
that the family business?
Yep. Dad was a pharmacist, owned a single pharmacy, and all the bread and butter things you learn as one pharmacist, owning your own business. It's the same for any business you do, whether you're a $1 billion company or a multi-million-dollar company. It's the same stuff, right? So
did you do any entrepreneurial things at school then, Dev? Like, sell sweets, buy them from so and so, or like, I was just intrigued, like that. What is it? Richard Branson sold records while standing in a phone box.
Yeah.
So did you do anything like that?
I think you actually only answered that question already, but yeah, the answer is yes. I think when I was in year 3, I went to quite a nice school, and I realised that all my school friends had quite a lot of money on them for some reason. So I decided to find a hole in the market, because our tuck shop wasn't selling juices or fizzy drinks. So I decided to go to the local newsagent, buy a 24-pack of Capri Suns, sold each one for £2.50, and made a pretty good margin on that, because a 12-pack.
Oh, what a result!
But then you get a 12-pack for like about £2 for the whole thing. So
brilliant.
Yeah, made some good margins in that. Didn't pay tax in it, but then actually got told off.
At year 3, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then I got told off for that as well. I got detention for apparently abusing the system in the school. So yeah.
They're probably just jealous.
So for selling sugary drinks, to kids was the redemption. You had to become a dentist.
It was actually sugar-free Capri Sun as well.
Oh,
I was being good there as well. No,
had his eye on the future. Had a future planning. Dev, I like that. Very good.
Yeah, I mean, it was cash, right? No tax. What's more better than that? Hello, you guys still there? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, we're fine.
This camera went off there. So I think it's one of those things where it was. I mean, when you work in a shop and you're working on the counter and selling products, and you're taking money from customers coming in, you're giving out prescriptions, all these small little traits of how to run a business, and thinking about why you're doing it for, how you're doing it. It makes your mind tick, and you start to think about, we could do the same thing in this or this or this. So always been quite entrepreneurial from that side of things. Started trading stocks at about 14 years old at school as well. So yeah, really got into understanding business and basic P&Ls and balance sheets before probably university even. And then after that, things just focused on dentistry really for about 5 years. And then came out and
was that encouraged in the family because your father was it your father the pharmacist or your mother?
Dad's a pharmacist. My brother's actually a dentist who's 3 years older than me as well. I would say he very similar to myself in terms of that kind of entrepreneurial spirit. But he's one of those kind of guys who will have 120 ideas but deliver on 0. And then I'm the opposite. I only have 3 or 4 ideas but deliver on all of them hopefully and do it 110%. So it's about, because we were together for pretty much all our childhood, we kept bouncing ideas off each other, and we had 101 ideas that we could have done dentistry by the time we were second year at university almost. We set up a company that was it was a pediatric subscription model whereby you could get oral hygiene advice stickers and goodie bags for practices that wanted that extra level of service for kids, and you'd pay us a monthly fee for that. So we were doing so many different things at even while we were at university level. It was, I think, kind of a matter of time before I got my hands stuck into real business afterwards. And then obviously looked to buy a practice quite early on.
So going back to you and your brother, what is the distinct difference between your ability to have this laser focus to deliver and focus on the deliverables, yet your brother has all these ideas but doesn't quite get them? What
it's amazing. It's a great question.
How come there's that difference?
I hope he doesn't listen to this, but you know what? It's funny because we had the exact same education, the exact same subjects at school, almost the same grades, same household. Like, it's almost impossible not to have almost exactly the same outcomes, right? Because in theory, you brought up in the same environment, the same level of love, care, teaching, work ethic, everything's given to you exactly the same way. We're only 3 years apart in terms of age, and for some reason we're almost polar opposites in terms of work ethic.
It is fascinating, isn't it?
It's
nature and nurture.
Well, I was going to say, there's that TV program, isn't there, on Netflix, 3 Identical Strangers, where there were triplets, and there was an experiment where they got put into different households, and by putting them in different environments, they behaved in different ways. And so there's obviously something that happened in that 3-year difference in age gap that meant that you just processed and you approached things in a slightly different way.
And genetics. Just your wired different.
Yeah, I think the 2 things I would put it down to is, one, energy. I'm pretty sure everyone knows I've got enough energy for the rest of the next 100 years. So one thing is I've got a lot more energy than him, which is just down to just personality, I guess, and metabolism. I don't know what it is. And I think the second thing is just friend group, maybe. My friends, 2 or 3 of my best friends were very entrepreneurial, constantly talking about, business opportunities, et cetera, where I think his friends were probably the opposite. So maybe it was just that kind of like who you surround yourself with mentality. So I mean, I don't think he's going to go choose business friends at the age of 7, but it just happened to be that way, right? So yeah, look, I think it's very interesting. I'm still quite amazed by how different we are, even though both dentists. He's got a mini group in Australia, I've got a group obviously in the UK. Both understand exactly the same level of caliber of business, but just very different places in life, right? And ambitions too, right? Different ambitions too, right? He's happy with what he's got, and I'm constantly not happy. So yeah, it's just one of those things.
And that's the other thing as well, isn't it? You know, there's no kind of rule book that says you're happier because you're more successful by whatever measure.
Exactly.
You know,
100%.
you're loving what you're doing and enjoying it, and I'm sure your brother's got an amazing life and enjoying what he's doing. It doesn't mean that one's better; it's just different, and different people want different things. And
Exactly, 100%. I think I tell that to all dentists as well. I said some people are like, "Oh, I want to buy my first practice. I want to do this. I want to do that." I'm saying, "Why?" And they can't answer the why. They go, "Oh, because he's doing it," or "I'm at the age now, I should be doing it." But I'm like,
what a rubbish idea!
Yeah,
I'm
rubbish.
happy you're an associate. Just do it. You know, do what you think, what you enjoy in life. And I've always had quite high expectations of what I want to get to in life. So, just it's one of those things, I guess, right?
Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing that you mentioned earlier on. I'm interested to know. So you mentioned customers and you mentioned patients. Do you see patients as customers or just as patients? It's an interesting one because some people feel seeing patients as customers, as in people who pay for goods, is almost sort of not the done thing. Or do you sort of look at it and say, well, actually, they are patients and customers as well?
I think that question is quite straightforward because if you look at a dictionary, a customer is someone who pays for a service, and patients are paying for a service. So no matter what everyone says, they're a customer. No matter what, it's a fact, right?
I agree with you. But a lot of dentists seem to have this real sort of funny thing about a customer.
Well, the thing is, right, is dentists don't like talking about money. They don't like talking about services and how you charge for stuff. They don't think they're worth enough half the time. It's just their mindset, You have to understand that you are running a business, whether you're an associate, whether you're a principal, you're working in a business, you're self-employed, so therefore you have your own business almost if you're self-employed. Therefore, you should know your own P&L. You should know what kind of revenue you're bringing in, how much you're going to bring in each day. You should know what you're charging. These are things that no matter what you think you are or not doing, you're offering a service to a patient who is a customer. Simple as that. But unfortunately, people don't see it as black and white as I do. And I think, you guys aren't dentists, but you understand that it is a transaction in the day, whether you like it or not. No matter how amazing the care is or how quick or short it is, it's still a transaction. They're paying for a service and you're delivering a service. And that's how HR sees it. That's how Dentistry sees it as well, right? So you just got to follow whatever the facts are in the world.
Do you find that when you work with your partners and the dentists in the practice, do you find that can sometimes be a bit of a hard transition for them to get, or do the partners that you work with obviously have got it, and then the dentists maybe in the practices sometimes you have to re-educate them a bit, or is it not really an issue?
I think it depends on who you're hiring here, guys. I mean, there are a large number of dentists out there who don't understand this and have the wrong mindset, which is fine. That's for them. No problems, happy days. They can work in hospital, work in community, do what they want, and just work and not understand how you're running a business essentially. But I think the dentists who work for us, for sure, are partners. Obviously, they wouldn't become partners in the first place, and then their associates either know it already or get trained to understand that mindset within the first few months. So I'll be surprised if we have any dentists in our whole group. I know most of them who don't understand that level of you are offering a service, you should be, giving the best outcomes, but you are charging for that as well appropriately. So it is a mindset thing, and I think attracting that kind of talent in the practice we operate is a key part of our success. Because as soon as you start having people with the wrong mindsets and working off different hymn sheets and not working along the same, vision, missions, and goals, you're never going to have a successful, fully steamed business. That kind of operates to maximum efficiencies. Yeah,
absolutely. We've talked a lot in the last few minutes about mindset and thinking of your own mindset. You kindly invited me to your Christmas party last year, and I remember when I walked in onto that mezzanine, I looked down onto where all the tables are laid out, and I'm like, flip, there's going to be over 300 people in this room. And that was like the back end of 21. We're now in the middle of 22, and you've grown since then. Your growth and your success so far has been remarkable. But when did your mindset change from being somebody who was a dentist who had a practice that said, right, I'm now going to grow a group? Was there a moment when that clicked, or was it a case of you got a practice, you got another practice, and it just evolved?
Or was it always there before you even started?
Yeah, it's a good question actually. I think there's two different things here. One is mindset, and one is when I decided to do a group. Right. So the first thing, mindset, I've always had that. I've always thought big. I've always thought bigger picture. Always thought, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 businesses are going to be enough for me. So I think that's just a personal mindset I've always had. I mean, I'm thinking billions here. Most people don't think more than millions, but I'm thinking, quite down the line here. So I think if you have that, want to become a billionaire mindset, you're going to have to start thinking big from day one, which is one thing, right? The second thing is doing a group. And that actually wasn't my initial intention. My initial intention was to find a niche within dentistry, wherever that may be. Originally, it was Dental Circle or an app, Brushlink, or, afterwards, the kind of group we did, and find something that can offer value to the industry or to patients or somewhere that I've got my skill set, because I knew from doing, the whole 5-year course of dentistry in university, there are 101 things that we're doing archaic, systems and processes or delivery that can be, innovated and changed. The question is, which one will make the most sense, grow the fastest, and deliver the most amount of, I would say, impact to the wider society, right? So that actually was a penny drop moment, and it was basically where I got to the point after 2 years of buying my first practice in Swanley through Frank Taylor. Thank you, guys. And essentially, I took over the practice, grew it really well from, as you probably remembered, Andy, like 2 to 6 chairs, double the turnover very quickly, won all these awards and stuff, which is great, and had a great team there. And we launched Brushlink at that time, which is in 2017. And I said, I've got to go out to the US, because we launched the company on the East Coast of America. And I was out probably every 2 weeks back and forth from the US to the UK. Now, traveling that much is tiring, A, and B, you're not physically able to do patient care anymore, because you can't keep pushing back patients every single 2 weeks because you've got meetings in America, right? You have to work out which one's going to drop. And I got to a point where I had to cut down clinically quite a lot. And at the time, I had a great associate who was there currently in the practice for about a year, and he wanted to buy into the practice. And I said, okay, great guy. I taught him well. He knows a lot about dentistry now. Let's let him buy in, and we can grow it together while I'm not there physically. But we put systems and processes in place for management that were scalable. And I've always thought about that being, how do I make it digital? How do I make it associated from day one? And after that worked for the first 6 months to a year, that's when the penny dropped. It said, I'm growing by 30%. I'm not in the country anymore, and it still works. And that's when I actually realized that the model is not about having 100 practices under my own name. It's not about being the next Bupa or the next IDH. It's actually about having a model that's scalable to keep quality high and leadership high on a local level. And that's what we did. And I think at the same time, just out of luck or age or whatever, that was 3 or 4 years into, obviously, postgraduate. I had other dentists now asking me, you won all these awards, the practice done really well for your one.
You need to pause there, Dev. You just gloss over 3 or 4 years postgraduate. Most people are not moving at this speed. We obviously sell dental practices, and most people that we talk to who are looking to embark on their first acquisition are probably 5 to 7 years qualified, something like that. You're 3 to 4 years. You've already got a practice. You've already put in place what is the embryonic system that you can actually build dental beauty on. So you're moving at lightning speed.
Yeah, I think look, I don't know why it happened. Well, I know that I wanted to buy one from before I even graduated from university, so I knew I was going to buy practice eventually. But I think I found it very easy, and it came to me naturally. It wasn't like I had to go to courses to learn how to run a business or to grow a business. I think I already had the foundations of, patient. Let's just start from the 4 main things running a practice, right? Understanding your business, understanding your P&Ls, all that stuff. I knew that. I was looking at P&Ls when I was at university. I knew that already. I knew how to do adjusted EBITDA when I was in first year of university, right? So I knew that part of the business. The second part was team building. I learned that a bit from working in the pharmacy, but also a bit from working within a practice from FD year and 1 year out, because actually, when you work in associates, great, you're like a fly on the wall. You're watching within the business on how the practice runs, how it operates, how not to be good at a team, how to run a team properly. And you learn these things from those kind of, environments. I actually thought I learned a lot of the bad things, in some of those years, and actually some of the good things from practice I went to go shadow. So I spent some time going to see some of my mentors from BACD and other places, to go watch a practice and learn how to run a good practice, how to run a good team. So you learn a lot from doing those kind of things. So I think teamwork and running a team work really well. Dental Circle helped me a lot, just to understand how to grow a business from scratch, from literally zero, from nothing, to set my own company up, how to then, build up your revenues, how to then do your tax returns, everything like that you learn from a startup. I learned that along that way. So that helped me a lot for the growth. And then the fourth thing I think running a practice, which is really key, is, just thinking about branding and what do you want to get, what's your missions, what's your values, what do you want to get towards? And I think I had that from the courses I was doing with, the Chris Orr course, the BSD lectures, and I knew I wanted to get the best patient care possible. But bringing that all together is where it became like, almost like a natural thing for me to just grow one practice, and it became easy. Yes, I've learned a lot since then in terms of things that I can do better. And you're not going to get perfect the first time round, but that foundation was almost like a good blueprint to start off with that might have taken people a bit longer to get to, but I found it quite natural almost.
So what point did you step away from clinical dentistry? Because you obviously had a practice, Brushlink was dragging you backwards and forwards across the Atlantic. So that was compromising your ability to spend time in the surgery treating patients anyway. But what point did you make a conscious decision to pack in wet-handed dentistry so you could grow the business?
Yeah, you know what? It's a great question, because I've got quite a few friends right now, I'm sure you will know, who've got their own startups or their own companies doing their own thing in dentistry, and thinking, when do I go full time into this? When do I stop my bread and butter guaranteed income of doing patient care and dentistry, wet fingered, and go full time into a startup? And I was very, very fortunate, because obviously I had a practice, had majority shareholding in it, had good cash flow coming from it without even working. And that's something that obviously allowed me to not have to work and still focus fully on the startup side of the business, So I think if I didn't have that, I would have kept doing at least one day's specific income, because I wasn't made that money, right? And just start from nothing. So I think that's probably why I was allowed to. And in my mind, I thought, if you're gonna do something properly, do it with 110%, or don't do it at all. Yeah. So if you are going to do a startup, rather than taking you 5 years to do it, you do it properly for 2 years, and you get into it and work it out if it's going to work or not. And
you've got to be in the canoe or not on the canoe. In the canoe, we sort of use this analogy. You got a foot on the bank or a foot in the canoe. You end up in the water. You either got to be on or off. It's simple as that, really.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Great, because if you put a bit of weight on the wrong side of it and you think you're half and half, you just fall over. So,
that's right. Yeah, it just doesn't work. Yeah,
exactly. So I had to just give it all, and remember as well, I raised money from investors who were believing in me to live on something. So you got to give them 110%.
No, absolutely. And so now, you've committed. You're going to grow this group. What's your style like? Do you work with, as it's grown and it's got a bit bigger, you obviously need more managers and an executive committee working with you. What's your style? Were you kind of that classic solopreneur who was doing everything for so long?
Can I just ask a question quickly before that? When was the second, sort of the practice that was your first sort of like partnership? What year was that?
So the first one we bought in Swanley was in 2015. And then the second one was Dulwich, which we bought with our partner, Canal, in 2019.
Wow.
But in between that time, there was a lot of time with brushing going on and other things, that kind of delayed that.
And just to bookend it, so you bought this practice, this second practice in 2019. To bookend it, bring us up to date. We're in May 2022. How many practices in the group at the moment?
As of end of next week, 35.
And by the end of this year, you're going to be upwards of 40?
50.
Wow. And when you think also, you've got to weave into there that terrible thing called COVID, which might have had a bit of an impact somewhere going on.
Just to help out the maths guys, without COVID, we would have been one per month for the last 4 years.
Yeah. It's amazing.
And amazing. Which was basically the whole plan anyway, ideally. So it's been good. From that side of things in terms of the acquisition growth, but I don't think that's actually a difficult thing to do once you've got the right model. I think once you have the right model and it's scalable, you can go from 0 to 100 within 5 years if you just
were there in that journey, Dev, were there any oh crap moments when you were like, oh my goodness, what have I done?
I tell people all the time that what you can see from the outside of a successful business is only probably 10% of it. There's so many failures, oh shit, I messed up here, or I made a mistake there, or how am I going to get around this problem? I think the only two things that kept me going is my positive mindset and determination. those are the only two things that you can get through as an entrepreneur, because there are probably more losses every single week than are wins.
Yeah, I think one of the things I've always used in my head is, do you remember that film Apollo 13? I don't know if you've ever seen the film of Apollo 13, and they say, right guys, we've got to turn these air purifiers to fit this, and then they just give them all the stuff that they have in that sort of like the landing module, and it's like, you've got to come up with a solution, otherwise these guys are going to die. And I always think that's a great one that sort of says, yep, I've got this. What do I do to make it fix? How do I make it work?
Yeah, I think, you know what it is, right? Dentists specifically are, I would say, relatively weak in terms of character when it comes to failure, because they're so used to being, they're straight A students, go through university, probably fly past BDS exams every year. They then graduate and they start making 100 grand or whatever a year. Like, you don't have many failures along that journey. And you're in a very comfortable position always. You're not out of your comfort zone. You never really have to go out of anywhere apart from what you might do your first implant or first, but apart from that, you're not ever pushing yourself to limit. And I think Brushlink and Dental Circle were two things that really, really kind of, I got a lot of experience out of that, because, it is literally make or die, right? You've got a zero company from day one. You either grow or you completely shut down. So there's no kind of like, ifs or buts or kind of ways around that. And I think all the failures you learn along that way, and, having to constantly think of solutions that you just don't exist. It's not like you can go to, a filling fails, the problem is, the solution is straight away, you fix it. It's straightforward. They were literally black and white. In a startup, there are 101 things you can go wrong each day, and only one thing that goes right. And you're thinking to yourself, I've got to find 101 solutions for every single thing that's going wrong.
And there's no manual, is there? You go, hang on, that's on page 73. Let me just check. Oh, right, that's the solution.
Yeah, I actually met. I went to Harvard University for a couple of months when I was doing studies out there with Brushlink, and spent a lot of time with some of the MBA students out there. These are the guys that are the best MBAs in the world in Harvard in business school, and they were saying that basically what they learn on the books and in paper is one thing, but doing it is 10 times harder. And actually doing it the other way around is basically doing an MBA in real life. Because all you're doing is learning it the hard way around, but just doing it on the day. So, I think people don't realize how hard it is. I know there's a few people out there, who are doing startups now and along that same journey, but it is really tough. And I think, startups being tech is one thing, but any company is a startup. Any new squat's a startup. You guys sitting in from scratch, right? It's a startup. It all counts the same thing. The burdens you're going to take and some of those losses along the way, it's just part of life. But you have to be positive. You have to get through it, and you have to put determination in to really make sure that you can find a solution and get to the end of that that journey and not quit halfway.
But that goes back to the mindset thing, doesn't it? About being comfortable with failure and almost seeking failure out. Lots of people use the gym as an analogy. The reason you go to the gym is to fail. Yeah, it's to do reps for as long as you can at a certain weight, and when you get to failure, you know that you've got to your limit, and then you try and go a bit further. But in business, that people are quite scared of that. But the things that you've done, there's lots of micro failures, and it's how you adjust and you accommodate those. But the world being what it is, people tend to only see the successes, don't they? They see kind of the growth and the things that are happening because you kind of manage those failures yourself. When you're talking about focusing on business, doing something exceptionally well, kind of, going for the moon, you might hit the stars type approach. You sold Brushlink, so you've now got, dental beauty partners, I guess, as your primary focus. What was the reason for selling Brushlink? Was it that you saw more potential in dental beauty partners? Was the timing just right? Were you being stretched a bit thin in terms of resource? Yeah, look, I think it was a combination of things. COVID hit at the same time. It required a full-time team in the US, which at the time none of our team were, really wanted to fully relocate to. And I think it's also a thing of time spent on building something from scratch. You built the platform. It's now either you take it to the next level and you really commit to by moving house, moving the whole family. I just had a baby as well at the time. And give it out, take it to the next level or the next step, or pass on that kind of platform you built with the software and the data and some of those contacts we have with insurance companies, someone else who can then do the same thing, but already have a bigger base
and a bigger scalable platform. So we got acquired by a company based in Silicon Valley who already were looking at dental startups, putting together, rolling them up. One of the directors in there was actually Mark Zuckerberg's dad, who's a dentist, which is a bit random. So yeah, like all these different things, you know, at the time just made a lot of sense. And I think from my point of view, I was really getting stretched everywhere. We had 12 practices at the time, 2 more in the pipeline during COVID. You know, there was obviously the whole debacle with trying to work out how to reopen again with PPE. And you remember all these times, Andy, you was on my webinar, you know, what do we do in terms of how do we open up again? What's NHS? What's happening with the private? You know, there's so much risk by having that many practices on one person's name, or a few people's, you know, myself and our partners' names. You think I need to be leader here, take over what, you know, it's not like it's running easily now. You're gonna have to reinvent the whole group again from scratch to become COVID compliant and, you know, rebound back to be able to, you know, do your bank debts again and repay all your loans, etc., etc. So I think it made sense for many reasons, but at the time it just made sense for the company as well, because it was in a great place, a lot of growth potential, and just had the right home to take it to the next level, really. And, you know, when you are born in the UK, you're not from the US. So working in the US, working within companies in the US is a whole different ballgame, you know, and you need to know that market, know the way that people do business out there, be physically present there to go to meetings regularly and fly between states. So yeah, I think having a baby, you know, having the right timing, and just the amount of kind of things I was running all at the same time just made a lot of sense. And yeah, kind of.
You talk about being and you talk about being a leader in dental beauty. Have you needed to adapt your leadership style as the business has got bigger? And how do you manage it? Because you've got your partners resident in the individual practices, but at a kind of head office level, how is dental beauty managed? Yeah,
so I think the leadership more so came during COVID because someone had to step up to just take control over what we're going to be doing, what's the next steps. It's like crisis mode, right? I always say, you know, during crisis mode, someone needs to step up and just take control and, you know, take the ball by the horns and crack on and get on with it. So I think we did a good job on that. And it wasn't just my own, obviously, all the partners got involved and we together worked out what the next steps are going to be and how we're going to take this forward. So I think that was, you know, mainly during that time. I always say after that, and even now, we are partners. You know, I don't make decisions for the company. I don't say tomorrow we're going to start selling, you know, Sonic toothbrushes. I say, you know, I'm here to support our partners, to give them my 2 cents on what I think you should be doing. If they say, no, that's not what I think we're doing, fine, you know, don't do it. But I'm actually here to help you guys to develop and get from A to B. The good thing is we have they've got a lot of trust and respect to me because obviously they know what I've done and what I can do for them and help them. And I go above and beyond for them and vice versa. So we have that mutual relationship. So it is a very strong partnership between, and not just me now, it's the whole of our head office team and our partners. So when you say what is a structure, we have practices with partners on each practice who are their own CEOs of their own practices. And our head office team, who are led by myself, are the support function laterally to support them deliver the marketing, the recruitment, the HR functions, the finance functions, and the operation functions for the practice.
Yes, it's smart. And I think it goes back to that thing you said earlier on about having somebody on the ground who owns the business. They motivate the team. They're there on a daily basis.
Their arse is on fire.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
is the phrase.
Isn't it? It's that thing where it's that
game. Yeah.
Yeah, completely. I mean, as a leader, you know, you're incredibly motivational. You're incredibly positive. You have the right sort of outlook. When you were younger, who did you look to as being good leaders that you took inspiration from?
Yeah, it's a good question actually, because very comes to the question you asked right at the end of this thing as well. I don't really have like I wouldn't say I have like an idol or a specific mentor. I think I learned a lot from my dad and my uncle, who both, you know, ran businesses, and obviously their stories are 10 times more inspirational than mine because they came from zero and they've obviously built up businesses from scratch, came in during times of racism and all that other stuff they had to do in the 70s, right? So I think they had, you know, 3 jobs while at university. I think myself, if I had an easy life, I think what I'm doing now is still pretty easy compared to what these guys had to go through, right? So I think, you know, if you look at that as probably my biggest inspiration, that's probably that. And then in terms of like, you know, learning business and learning how to, you know, create companies, I haven't been taught by anybody specifically. I would say I've seen, some great dentists like Samir Patel, obviously with 11 Dental, and I spent a bit of time with Mark Hughes as well. Monica Bassant, some of these guys a long time ago had some calls with them, but these are like 1 or 2 hour calls, right? They're not going to teach you everything in life. So I think a lot of this stuff just came naturally to me, and I think I've always looked at it as, if I like Apple, if I like going to a nice hotel, what are they doing right? And how do I put that into my business as well? So I think one of the things that I would say is a big strength for me is that I do take my everyday life and think, well, if I want to get to that same brand level, that same kind of company, what are they doing right, and how do I bring it into my business? So those are the kind of things I think have brought all of it together for me sometimes.
And I think that's healthy within dentistry. I think one of the things that dentistry possibly does suffer with, it's quite incestuous. The same people as providers kind of keep circling around within the profession. I think where you get external people coming in, or people looking outside and drawing in ideas from other markets or other sectors, I think can be really helpful.
Yeah, looking at what hotels do and experiences, car showrooms, stuff like that. I think all that is invaluable, really.
Yeah. I think to be honest with you, the actual patient journey experience has been there for way before my time. I think, there were guys doing it 30 years ago, just amazing patient, these guys more than I do, in central London and Manchester, even, the Kiss brand, these guys are doing this stuff way before I was in terms of patient journey. The one thing that I think I brought differently to the UK was that model for the partner model, which came from the US originally when I went out there. And I think that's actually a legal requirement. You have to have a dentist with equity in each practice. So, that model wasn't like a new thing out there, but spending a lot of time out there made me realize that actually model can really work well and can be scalable.
Yeah.
It's interesting though. I mean, and we've known a couple of people who've tried it, but not succeeded at all. So, there's something that you've done, whether it's you, and your drive. We've seen a number of times where they've sort of looked at it and it's just failed. It's just failed big time. They've either not chosen the right partners, and I think that must be a big part of your success is, almost your interviewing of assessment of who you want to work with.
Yeah, I think it's a good point actually, because obviously Dentex tried doing it when they first came to market with the actual partnership model with young dentists. I think there's a couple of other smaller players in the market. I think the one thing that we did quite well was when we first had the concept of a partnership, we did one practice obviously first, and we knew we want to roll it out. I spent probably 6 months speaking to private equity firms, bankers, my in-laws, people that know that sector well, about how do you properly structure a group backwards from exit almost backwards. And think, what do we need to get towards? What stuff do you need paperwork wise? What kind of legal documents do you need? What kind of structure do you need for equity? How's it, the midco stuff? All these different things, you've got to plan it from backwards, because as Andy mentioned before we jumped into this, there are so many practices I know, multi-site owners who just buy practices just one at a time, keep going, when they buy 3, 4, 5, 20, and they haven't thought the other way around about how you structure things in the first place, and they're constantly chasing their tail because they're not thinking the next step ahead. I think that's one thing that we've done really well, is that we have literally looked at, the model actually is not even that different in the UK. The same model has been done by Specsavers and Optical Express. It's a joint venture model, even with veterinary as well. So it's not like it's a new thing for in terms of UK healthcare even. And actually, if you think backwards from what you want to achieve and work out what you need to get there, it's much easier because you're actually just planning. It's like dentistry, right? I always treat and plan a patient when I look at them straight away in the mouth, backwards, saying, your end result is this. We need to do X, Y, Z to get you there in the first place. So that mindset actually comes from dentistry as well, to be fair. It's not just business only.
But I think you're right. I think a lot of small and mid-sized groups just keep bolting practices
there's
on.
no destination planning.
No.
It's like, oh, hang on. You wouldn't get in a car and go, oh, shit, where am I going? Oh, yeah, I want to go to Edinburgh. Oh, yeah. We always start off with going to Edinburgh, don't we?
So if we roll out 5-10 years from now, where does Dental Beauty Partners end up?
Well, look, I think at least in the next 5 years, I would hope to be in the top 10, biggest players in the UK. And in 10 years' time, probably top 3.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Any overseas ambitions in there, Dev?
We're already part of a overseas group, Chris. We are part of European Dental Group, which is the second biggest player in Europe.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
So
I was just thinking of you. Do you move your model to them, or did they bring?
they do the same
Did
model we
they
do already.
fund?
They do the same thing that we do already. So it's not like
Okay.
I'm doing Europe. So we're all a partnership model anyway. So I think, that as a group, we're probably the biggest in Europe by far within the next 5 years anyway. We're growing you think we're growing fast. Imagine doing it by 7 countries. We're all doing the same thing, that level of growth, right? So I think,
Wow.
we've got about 450 clinics and 200 labs now and et cetera, et cetera. So I think we are going to be the biggest player in Europe by far and potentially eventually in the world, I think. So,
And tapping into that wider resource and knowledge base and experience can only help you over here.
I'm literally going there next week to spend time with other CEOs of all the other countries to kind of, share best practices and see how we can develop each other.
Which makes so much sense.
Yeah.
That everybody uses that phrase, learn from your mistakes. And we always say, no, learn from somebody else's. Learn from somebody else's mistakes.
Cheaper.
Yeah.
It's much cheaper.
It's a much better idea.
Yeah. No.
No, you're like I say, I feel exhausted just hearing about the speed at which you're moving, to be honest. I need to go and have a lie down. Honestly, I think it's staggering. I think it really is. And you make it look so easy, and we know it's not. And that's a lot of your personality and your style and the confidence you have in yourself. But the waves you're making, and I think other people should take massive inspiration from you, because the profession is all joined up one way or the other, and there's no reason why anybody should feel that your success diminishes theirs or they're losing as a result of you winning. Everybody can do well, and I think as a shining star within dentistry, I think what's happening is good for the profession generally.
And hopefully the market for dentistry in the UK is expanding.
Yes.
That's one of the things that might have come out of COVID, I think, is that the approach from the public towards dentistry has changed, I think.
Oh, absolutely has. Absolutely has.
Yeah.
We always finish up in the same way, Dev. We always ask our guests the 2 same questions. And the first one is, if you could be the fly on the wall with somebody in a certain situation, where would you be and who would you be with?
I've been thinking about this actually, and I think if I could be a fly on the wall in a certain situation, I would love to be generally within number 10 Downing Street, just to see what these guys talk about, because it's almost astounding how poorly I think our government runs this country. And I'm saying that because I think that from the outside, but I wouldn't know unless I'm actually in that room. I think sometimes, the press and everyone else, always says the negative things about what's going on. But, from our point of view, I think they can do better. But once again, everyone thinks I can do better as well, but it depends on obviously when you're actually in that room. So I would actually love to be in 10 Downing Street one day during those crisis meetings during COVID and seeing what those guys are talking about. Because now looking back on all of it, what we do stuff right, was it wrong? No one, there's still no answer on whether it was right or wrong, how we reacted to all of it. But even with the, with the way the CDO, managed dentistry, for example, just being in that room, listening to how they were strategizing, how they're going to take care of the whole country. I was worrying about my own group, worrying about my own, my own dentist, my own patient base, but this is a whole country. And, big decisions to be made. And there's so much chit chat on Facebook groups, and you guys see it as well, right? About what they could have done better, what they should have done X, Y, and Z. But it'd be lovely just to see how these guys think and what they actually do. Because
no, it would be, because I think you're right. I think a lot of things that get reported, it's manipulated or spun one way or the other. And I also genuinely believe, I don't think people ever set out to try and make bad or wrong decisions.
Yeah.
I think with hindsight, sometimes they weren't the best decisions, but with the information they had at the time, I genuinely believe people try to make good decisions.
Implementing change in one company is hard enough. Implementing change in a country is like...
but also it had to be done rapidly in real time with no knowledge of what the impact would be of the step you've taken. So that would be a fascinating one.
And changes every 5 years. Can you imagine if leadership changed every 5 years in a business? You're off now, Dev. We're going to get someone else in to try and run this. Right now, they're off. Going to get someone else in. It's just like madness.
Oh, it's hard.
Yeah.
And then our last question is about if you could meet somebody. If you had the opportunity to sit down and have a dinner or a glass of wine with somebody, who would you like to sit down and meet?
Probably laugh at me, but it would be Jay-Z.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Jay-Z, but I think it's a similar kind of story as I mentioned before. Coming from almost nothing to building an empire and becoming one of the most famous people in the world in terms of music and stuff. I would love to speak to the guy from 2-3 hours and find out his journey, his successes, his failures, because I think there's a lot of I'm a big fan of music, and obviously that gives me a bit of motivation, inspiration as well on a daily basis. But seeing someone when you've grown up with that person, I'm sure you guys have similar musicians that you would want to spend a dinner with or a few hours with to talk to them. It'd just be interesting to kind of speak to the guy.
But like you say, I suppose everybody sees him for kind of the music and the fashion, but there's so much more to the guy. You don't get to the level that he's at by just being those things.
And he's married to Beyonce, so that's not bad, is it?
There's obviously a real depth to him in terms of how he's built his life.
Yeah. I mean, keeping to that level of being still on top of his game for 20, 30 years, that's really interesting to me. I think you see a lot of celebrities who, footballers or musicians, come in for 3 or 4 years and then they die off, and then no one really knows what after that. They're like that guy from 20 years ago, that kind of one-hit wonder. But someone like him who's just been on top of his game for 20, 30 years and still is an icon even now after he's 50 plus, right? It's just like Beckham, right? It's just amazing how these guys can still be top of their game.
No, brilliant. Dev, we really appreciate your time.
Yeah, fantastic.
Like I say,
Thank you.
We know how busy you are, and we know you've got a lot going on, but I think to give people an insight as to how you've got there and some of those nuggets of those kind of small granular things that you have to do to build a business, I'm sure the listeners will take a huge amount from that.
Year 3, that's when you started.
Exactly. No, brilliant. Really appreciate your time today, Dev.
Thank you, guys. Great having me on. Thank you.
Yeah,
thanks, Dev.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Dentology, where we discuss the business of dentistry. If you like what you heard, please do subscribe where you found this episode. That would be amazing. And also follow us on Instagram.